So hi everybody, my name's Madeline and I'm here from Prima EAP. I know we have a bit of a more mixed audience today at our speaker spotlight. We run these monthly for our employee assistance program, but today we are joined by the men's table. So I know you guys have opened up the invitations to your community as well. So for the attendees from Prima who might not be familiar, the men's table are a non-profit organization who focus on men's mental health and well-being. And they've created a community of men's tables where men can open up confidentially about their mental health. So they're here today to have a chat with us. So if you guys want to take it away.
Thanks, Madeline. Great. It's David Poynton here. I'm one of the co-founders of the men's table. Real pleasure to be here. And thanks to Prima EAP. This is the third year running. We've done something with you guys for Mental Health, Men's Health Week, and it's a pleasure to be here again. I'm going to do intros to our four awesome panelists in just a minute. But I just wanted to say give a quick preamble about the topic, healthy habits for healthy men, healthy masculinities, and healthy relationships. And there's a lot of healthy in that. We know about healthy habits, right? Eat well, drink plenty of water, get lots of sleep. A lot of things that aren't talked about so much is about our social and emotional well-being and the habits we can create about connection, having intimate relationships, having relationships where we can be open and share feelings. These are the sorts of things we're going to dig into a little bit more today. And so that's why the sort of topic's got a few teasers in there, because it's all about those things benefit our health, but also they benefit the ways we see ourselves as men. And I know there's a lot of women on the call as well. So thanks for your interest in this topic. And maybe, you're here with an interest in the overall, topic and themes of masculinity in the current zeitgeist. Maybe there's somebody you've got in mind who you've joined, with an interest around. For men, there's a lot of stuff going on around masculinity and, redefining it. What does it mean to be having healthy masculinities? And those things can flow on to healthy relationships and healthy communities. So that's the topic for today. I thought we might just start in terms of being healthy and having habits. Last night, I was one of my two men's tables, and the guy who hosted our table last night is a well-being professional in the workplace, and he just started us with a really simple grounding activity. So play with me. Basically, he had us put our feet on our floor. So just invite you to settle in if you're sitting down. If you're standing at your desk, just make sure your feet are nice and flat on the floor, and just kind of noticing your body, and then just taking a deep breath, just a really nice, slow, deep breath in. Maybe you can count to 5 as you go. And then a slow breath out and release. And we'll do that one more time. Just a nice, slow, steady breath in and just noticing your feet on the floor and sitting in your chair or in your stance. And a slow breath out, releasing that slowly to help us all arrive. Thank you. We're going to have a conversational style chat today. We'll try and employ a few of the guidelines that we use at the men's table, sharing from the heart. So I've invited the panelists just to share stories that are meaningful to them, things that they feel passionate about, things that have impacted on their lives. And we also have the idea, one of the guidelines at the men's table is no fixing. So we're not going to be here to fix anyone's idea, but just to share openly with each other and ideally feed off each other to see where the conversation flows. And, with a real focus on listening too, really absorbing and taking the time to hear each other. So that's the kind of construct we've got here. But also I invited the panelists to be a bit edgy, say a few things that maybe aren't often talked about, or maybe are a bit uncomfortable to talk about, or maybe uncomfortable to hear. So I welcome that in as well from all of you guys. So it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. I'll go in alphabetical order. Firstly, Anthony Doyle. Hi, Anthony. Anthony's a single dad with 3 boys. He works as a business consultant in finance. He's had some life-changing moments in the last while, and this has led to him making some significant changes. And the men's table has been a real source of support and resources for him in his personal growth. He's part of the table in Randwick, MT38. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, David.
Next up is Jason. Jason was a itinerant traveller and recently settled down in beautiful Launceston in Tasmania, and is encouraged by his wife to join the local men's table, and now boasts a growing range of friendships and connection that you've made there. Jason, welcome, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Ray Bonney. Ray and I are both board members of the Australian Men's Health Forum. That's how I first met Ray. She's also a member of the board for Global Action on Men's Health. And she's been focused on men's health in the workplace and with crisis and suicide counselling and so on for many years. She specialises in high risk and male-dominated heavy industry workplaces. And has skills, a lot of skills and a lot of experience in talking with men about what they're going through. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you so much for having me.
And finally, Ty Kennelly. Now, I'm a bit of a Swans tragic, so it wasn't how you got the gig, Ty, because you're doing some other fantastic stuff. But Ty Kennelly is the only person to have won an AFL Premiership medal and a Senior All-Ireland Championship medal, playing both AFL and Gaelic football in his professional sporting life. Took roles with AFL and now as a development and academy coach for a couple of clubs. And he's also, more relevant to today, co-founder of W Now, When No One's Watching, which is not dissimilar to the men's table in its basic idea, getting men together to have open-hearted conversations and share. The difference there is you guys meet by the water and dive in early morning, and we meet over dinner and maybe a drink. So, but there's a lot of overlap, and it's a real pleasure to have seen your program growing. Ty, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys, let's kick off. So the topic: healthy habits for healthy men, healthy masculinities, and healthy relationships. What comes to mind? Tell me a bit about maybe your story or something about your story that has you resonate with any of those threads in that theme. And when we did this last time for a little practice run last week, Ray, you kicked us off. So I'm going to throw to you, and then from there, we'll just see where it flows.
Well, surprisingly, I don't have a personal story about being a man because I don't know if it's clear, but I am a woman. However, I have, dedicated much of the last 14 years to men's health. And I'm very lucky to have travelled all over Australia and much of the world speaking to men about what it feels like being them. And I think that's the crux of it for me, is our approach to men in any respect is particularly about what it feels like rather than what we think it is. And, I posted something this week on LinkedIn, and it was like, can we please stop telling men? Can we start actually listening and asking what it feels like being them in all respects? So I guess that's my kickoff. What does it feel like being you today?
Yeah, thank you. Whoever wants to go next. Our first responses, our own story related to some of the threads in the topic that we're talking about today.
Well, just going off what Ray said, that's actually a surprise to me. Asking men how they're feeling or what it's like to be a man is a completely alien concept to me, even. That's the first I've heard of it. That's because nobody actually comes up and says, how do you feel? How are you? How is your life? Unless they just want a generic stock answer. And as men, we tend to give the generic stock answer pretty good. Yeah, I'm good, and move on to talk about footy, I guess.
Well, that's right. What it feels like being you today actually requires an answer. And, typically men are sent to war. They're sent to the mines. They're sent out into fires, sent without much of a choice generally. And I'm including women in this as well, of course. But that question, what does it feel like to actually be sent? My experience of working with men out in the field is never occurred to me to even think about that I had a choice.
Yeah. Anthony, what's alive for you as we start the conversation?
I think for me, being a man, it feels like being part of a revolution in some sense, particularly meeting men my age, and I think sort of there's a progression towards breaking down old school sort of typical stereotypes about masculinity. I guess we saw some of that through the 80s and 90s, but I think it feels like there's real change going on in terms of men's health and understanding, you know, what it means to be a man today. So particularly, you know, out and about meeting other men in the community or men through the table, there seems to be a real need to change, and you know, it feels like a lot of blokes are on board with that.
Thank you. Ty, did you want to?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Anthony's comments. I think my own childhood, and I look at my own parents and my own grandparents, and you know, the conversation of masculinity at the minute, and what my dad thought masculinity was, and his dad, and you know, I don't agree with a lot of what they did as parents and grandparents, but that's what they knew. And the big thing that we do at WNO is about trying to drop that body armor. But I take myself back to my parents and my grandparents, and they had to put up this armor because life was tough in a small country town in Ireland where they had to work hard, and you know, there was a lot of trauma and disappointment. And I think it's going to be generational change, because me now still have that, and that armor has been passed on to me. And now, because of the work that I'm involved in the past couple of years, it's made me think about what masculinity is to me. And I've got 2 young boys and a daughter, and I'm thinking, well, my masculinity is about pushing my kids through the uncomfortable to be resilient, or is it helping them ask for help? So I'm consistently trying to get that balance right with my own parenting and what it means to be a man. Also, myself is my masculinity to be asked for help, or just, you know, not suck it up, but just push through the uncomfortable piece myself. And that's probably the conversation in my own mind and the group that we have at the minute around what masculinity is for you as a man is certainly starting to create conversation, which is only going to help us and change and improve masculinity going forward.
Yeah.
We spoke about this in another session, and I think I may have kicked this one off as well. It's the apology that we prefix masculinity with. And I think, Ty, you even just did it then about being better. And that question always just reverberates in a really uncomfortable space in my head, that we generalize that masculinity is not a good thing because we prefix that with toxic. And masculinity is actually very, very beautiful in its form, in any form. And I think men and women, we all have to really, really change our language around how we are framing masculinity. And maybe if we're looking at diversity and inclusion as a whole thing, then let's just talk about people, you know.
Yeah, that's right. We could talk about people. I think the value of a focus on men's health in this week, being Men's Health Week, is good as well, because you could also say there is this massive change going on. And, you know, most men who come to a men's table are really grappling with, you know, how am I meant to be now? Like the old ways are going out, and rightly so in some cases. That stoic approach, you know, it's valuable in certain circumstances, but in other cases it means people, men are holding back, like you said, Jason, holding stuff in. Let's talk a bit more about this idea of masculinities, the changes that are taking place. What is healthy masculinities? What's alive for you guys, and what are you seeing around you? What are you hearing from other men?
I'll jump in again because I deal with hundreds of men every year, probably thousands of men, and it's all very similar, that men are really good. I can't remember meeting any men that are toxic or aren't good dads, aren't good fathers, aren't good partners, aren't good sons. Most of them are, as in anyone. But healthy masculinity, it's kind of really subjective, isn't it? Because, you know, you look at a man who's, you know, I'm very concerned about how boys are being raised, for example. So if boys are being raised to not show their feelings or to repress their feelings and to not speak out about how they're feeling, because that's where we're at. Boys actually aren't biologically predisposed to not speaking and not feeling. They're just not shown how to do that. So what is healthy masculinity in a man that's never been shown as a boy to actually embrace his masculinity? It's not like you can just all of a sudden, wow, get healthy with this stuff. That's a question.
I mean, you guys at the tables and you, Ty, in your group, you're seeing transformation occurring in front of you, maybe within yourself. What are some of those things that are shifting for you?
Yeah, 100%. David, you've seen men come down to the groups that we have on Wednesday mornings around the country, and they're willing to show their vulnerability, which now the age group that we have is general demographic is 30 to 65. Now these men are also bringing down their sons and becoming real role models and exposing them to mentors in the group that are actually showing their vulnerability and speaking up and creating a space. We're trying to create a space where they're feeling comfortable enough to do it. Now, often men can't do that, and it's challenging enough to come out and do it in front of a bunch of people that you don't know. But trying to create a space where they do feel comfortable doing it is what we're seeing. And this inevitably is helping a community of men feel more comfortable showing their vulnerability, of course, which can be challenging.
But why can't they be comfortable in the first place?
Well, I'm not sure. And that's obviously, again, it's a bit subjective to what you just said, on your parenting.
An interesting question.
And what's happened with your upbringing. Everyone's very different. We've all got our own challenges and whatnot. So we're trying to create a space where men can actually offload some of this stuff or connect, which is, like I said beforehand, you can be in the city of Sydney with 6 million people and you're lonely. And we all obviously know the effects of being lonely on your mental state.
Yeah. Anthony, what were you saying there? I think you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good question from Ray. I guess masculinity is it is subjective. And it comes back to what you were saying, Ty, about what our relationship with our dad was like and our grandfather. So, what was our closest example to a man growing up? And I think for me, it was sort of midways into 40s. I took quite a while to grow up. So my idea of what my father was, I think I saw him as a good model, but I also feel through that transformation, particularly because I was looking at how I want to raise my boys, I kind of challenged some of that idea of what masculinity was. And I think, Dad did sort of bring that armor home. You could see the times that he was really up against it. Had a good life. Did things differently, I guess, to the way, particularly in terms of how I'm raising my boys. Not as hands-on, but that's not a judgment. But I guess it's a new generation. Something that's important I want to pass on to the boys is self-acceptance and truth. So own your shit and don't rely on faulty logic and silly ideas about the future. Get real with who you are today and what you can change in yourself to be better. Is that masculinity, or is that just being a good, healthy person? It's tricky, I think.
Yeah. Jason, what are your thoughts?
I'll just continue on what Anthony said. The main role model that we have is usually our father. So if he's a bit closed off and non-communicative, we tend to think that is exactly how we're supposed to be. That's what a real man is, because he's the main influence. For me, though, my dad was actually quite a talker, quite open, and would ask a lot of questions. But the extended family, all the other men in our life, were all sort of working class guys who would kind of just slap me around a little bit. Not literally, just, verbally slap you, kind of shut up, stay quiet, kind of copy us, if you know what I mean. It would be like, this is what a real man is. And they, for the most part, basically diminished the role of my father, as if act like us, not like him. He's a bit of an outlier. Okay. So I actually took that on a little bit more, knowing that effect, the societal effect was a little bit stronger than my actual family.
Yeah. I mean, my own experience, I was a very sensitive young person, and probably still am a sensitive older person, quick to tears. I can feel my face getting flushed, the emotions are rising, and I'm smaller statured too. And I kind of learned, hang on, if I'm going to hold my own here, I just have to push all that down. And one of the things I've noticed is the simple act of letting myself feel okay to have some tears, or to feel that emotional, that sadness, that whatever it is that's sweeping over me, just to let that out. It's never comfortable, but getting used to it. So in terms of healthy habits, just doing that on a regular basis is helping me go, you know what, that's a part of who I am. So why would I try to hide that? But I think when I was younger, I felt like I had to hide it. I felt like I couldn't dare show weakness.
Yeah, David, sorry.
You go.
You go.
I was just going to sweep all that together a little bit, really listening to everybody's lens on that, and how, feeling that a social determinants approach to men's health is so much more effective than just focusing on mental health. And, my own experience, I grew up in a traumatic and violent environment where men were perpetrators of all of that violence. And, I was very fortunate to be able to get out of there at a very, very young age. But, fortunately for me, the question that came to me at a very young age, I was only 15 when I left home, was what happened to them to make them behave like that. And that's really stuck with me, and which probably sparks so much of my passion and commitment to really focusing on how boys are being raised. That's how I saw all of those outcomes.
I was just going to say, David, just resonated on what you said more for myself around the sporting arena. When you're a young man and you're coming through in sport, and there's a lot of piece around, suck it up and don't show your emotion, and you're playing sport, you're supposed to be tough and hard, and that's the way men and boys are brought up to play sport. And I was very similar to yourself, a sensitive soul, and I don't know if I'm too sensible, but and I was pushing those emotions down, and it took really till later in my football career when I got more confidence in who I was as a man, to be able to show my emotion and wear it on my sleeve. And that's the type of person I am. And
just a little wobbly
because
signal.
I thought that's the way I'm communicating.
Sorry, you had a signal patch there. You're back with us.
It just was where the world was concerned for me, that I actually thought, that I had to be this big, bold, brave, strong man, when I was really an emotion and like to wear my emotion on my sleeve. I really struggled with that piece. And I think that's part of the sporting world and the problems we have with a lot of young men today.
Yeah. So let's think about linking this discussion about masculinities and exploring alternative ways of showing up as a man or as a human with the idea of healthy habits. I mean, the men's table, it's a once a month commitment, same night of the month. So one table might meet on the second Tuesday, another table might meet on the third Wednesday. So that's a simple habit. Show up to your men's table and step into a different kind of conversation. Ty, your organization, the groups you're forming, show up, weekly? Come down to the beach, have a swim, and then have an open-hearted chat. So these are simple examples of habit forming. I mean, what comes to mind when we start thinking about, healthy habits, particularly in relation to not just drinking water, but this sort of psychosocial space, friendships, connection, our mental and emotional health. What have you guys got to share about forming healthy habits, what they can look like?
I think the biggest one that comes up to me all the time with men, and this has got to do with the social thing as well, is alcohol, the role that alcohol and other substances play in our communities, and the promotion and acceptance of things, especially like alcohol. And, it really hit home to me last year when a man approached me out in Dubbo, I think it was, and said, hey, I think I have depression. How do I diagnose that? And I said, oh, tell me about your life. How much are you drinking? He said, oh, not much, maybe 6-pack a night, triple that on the weekend, bottle of scotch, not a lot. Okay, that's not much. And I said, do you understand that the moment that you ingest alcohol, that absolutely wipes out all of your serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all of that is gone. So if you don't have any of that in your system, how are you going to feel? You're not going to feel great at all. So is this depression, or is this something else? So I think that's something around healthy habits, to really have the habit of awareness of what we're consuming. And that's not just what we're putting into our mouths, but also our environments around us. Who are we hanging out with? What does that make us feel like? And then we can determine, is that healthy for us? Getting in touch with that feeling.
Nice. Others?
I think when we think of habits, we think, people seem to go grand and big if they want to change or bring in a habit. I'm a big believer in really small and achievable, so they become the norm. Your habits are really about creating your system, which inevitably is the system is a collection of habits. And I'll go back to a football analogy. Obviously, I spent 20 years in a system of doing the small things well, which lead to the bigger things. And you can't look at the scoreboard only. You have to, obviously go through the outcome, and for the outcome, you got to go through the process. And my advice is really just the turn-up person. If you want to be doing more physical activity, go to the gym. It's the 2-minute piece that I'm a big believer in. Just show up and turn up and get your clothes ready the morning beforehand, or the night before, and you put your clothes on. And actually, if you get to the gym, you don't do anything. Well, you do that over a few days, and you spend 2 minutes in the gym, and it's starting to create the habit. And then the habit obviously becomes your behavior. And like I said, the habits are really a collection of your system.
Yeah.
I think positive habits as well, because there's two sides of habits. You can have a completely negative habit, or you can use positive habits. Negative habit, I'd say, is for men, when you suppress how you're feeling just to get along. So you get so used to it, you just do it automatically. But a positive habit would be share your feelings. Tell whoever you love or whoever's around you how you actually feel, instead of just having it build up, well up, and then into a kind of big event. If you can communicate exactly how you're feeling as you go, instead of not doing it, you don't get to the point where it's a big drama or something's got to change. You can actually do the little change over time. Exactly, for, like I said, with sport, it's doing the little things consistently, instead of just waiting for that big problem where you've got to fix the whole system that you're living under.
Yeah. Nice. One of my little ones is man hugs. When I see, most men who meet for the first time, they're not going to have a man hug, right? The hand goes out. And what I notice is for many, it's actually quite hard to break that habit of just opening yourself out. And it's not like it's appropriate all the time, but certainly when I get to my men's table, I'm part of 2 men's tables. When I get to my 2 men's tables, I'm up for a hug with everyone who's there at the start of the night, and then another one at the end of the night. Now that might be overkill, but I'm trying to build that habit of just being open, just being open and ready to engage. So that's just one little one that comes to my mind as I've gone through. Well, MT1's turning 12 coming up soon, so that's plenty of hugs. And my second table, we're about 2.5 years in. So still a mounting number of hugs there too, which is good.
Well, there's many other cultures where that's just a matter of course.
Yeah,
I was actually speaking to my friend Matt last night, and Matt's from Mildura here in Northern Victoria, and he now lives in China and owns many factories. He's done very well for himself, to the detriment of his mental and physical health over the years. But we were talking last night, and we both sort of arrived at such a great antidote and a really wonderful medicine. It's just simple gratitude as a healthy habit, to actually frame everything and see what kind of gratitude piece belongs in every piece. Just being here today, for example, in this forum, how grateful are we that we can actually do this, that we can be connected by technology to get these messages out? That's just simple gratitude, because years ago, we could never have done this.
Yeah, definitely.
Can
Anthony,
I just
healthy habit for you? Oh, sorry, Ty.
The other thing just with habits, if you do start in the new ones, is you know, when you do mess up, is not to just fall back and fall apart. You know, these things, and embracing your imperfection piece around, well, I'll keep going, and the more you keep going at it, eventually you'll break the habit. And it's not to eat yourself up so bad. If you do, don't continue with it, or it does break. Don't eat yourself up.
Yeah. So have some self-compassion.
That's right.
One of my healthy habits is connections. So just looking across my week, trying to find space to connect with siblings, my partner, friends, and particularly being on the men's table. We've got a few new guys that have joined, so trying to reach out to some of them where I can fit that in across a week. Sort of a little bit back to the gratitude piece that you mentioned, Ray. I think, you know, a part of that is, you know, checking in on people that you know, and you know, maybe listening to them if they've got challenges going on. I think that always helps make you feel a little bit more grateful for what you've got.
Yeah, no, it's such a great practice to start appreciating more what we've got. I hadn't said earlier to the audience that we are obviously keen for your comments. There's the chat box that you can put things in. We've got a few people making comments there. And we've also got the opportunity for a couple of questions or comments from audience. So this could take us off into all sorts of directions, but we've got a couple of guys with their hands up. So maybe we'll just let them in briefly, Brent, Powell, and then Matthew Steen. So I'll just hit this allow to talk button. Brent, if you are still there, if you want to raise a comment or a question. Might have been away from his screen. Okay. What about, we'll try Matthew. I've never done this function before. Here we go.
Doing very well.
Matthew Steen. No. Okay.
They're both muted though. So
they're both muted.
Yeah. Talking permitted. Asked to unmute. There we go. How does that work? Matthew, can you look, they might have hit the hand up button by mistake, or have done that and then have wound out. So anyway, look, just thought we go for more audience participation, but we're having a good old chat here, so we'll just carry on with what we're doing. We might try the tech again a little bit down the track. Okay, and we've got Joseph, have we, coming in?
G'day. Look, I did send a question through, and because I certainly really appreciate and understand our different gendered experience as male, female, or whatever. But to me, I'm wondering whether it's good to focus primarily on whatever anyone is feeling, is primarily human. Then, I mean, we can move out into the different sort of gendered varieties or nuances of that. But I just wonder sometimes if we start just talking about male experience, female experience, it's already divisive. Whereas if we can find a common ground in human first, and everyone agrees with that, and then we're all in the same tent, then we can develop those nuances of different experiences based on gender and culture and so on. So just wondering what the panel thinks of that.
Thanks, Joseph. Thoughts?
Simply trust your gut, and take any gender out of it. Take every single other element out and trust your gut. Use every part of you, your eyes, your ears, you smell, everything to make a determination about what it feels like for somebody else. I think we can't always go with stereotype or experience, or our, using our own experiences. As soon as we start sentences with you need to, you should, or you have to, you're going down the wrong path. It's, I think, Joseph, you made the comment about creating space, and I think space, Ty, you probably know about space playing football. You can't play a game of footy without space. You all need to know where you're at, and you need to be able to see what's happening. And I think that's the same for anybody when we're in any kind of conversation, is to create that space and time for people to be able to express what it feels like being them.
Yeah, what came to mind from my perspective as I heard you, Joseph, was yes, we are all human, and really we all yearn for connection. We all yearn for safe places and opportunities to be heard and to express our feelings. Then we've got overlaid with that the challenge that men in a men's only environment do get access, I think, to a certain kind of conversation that they don't necessarily have access to when it's a mixed gendered environment. So I'll be interested in, from the three guys on the panel, if you agree with that, what's your experience of that? Maybe you have a different view.
I asked my partner the other day if she thought the idea of a women's table would make sense. I kind of thought I knew the answer, but she said no, probably not, because women already know how to connect and communicate with each other. Men aren't. Seems as well equipped to do that. My experience being in the men's table, seeing guys coming along, particularly the new ones, there is a feeling that a lot of guys go through some growth just by being in the table. Can be quite awkward about sharing within a few table meetings. That seems to have dissipated, and it feels like that's something that isn't innate in them. As a bloke. So
yeah,
it's quite confronting. As sorry,
off you go. Sorry.
No, you go.
I agree, and I could go to the pub and spend 5 hours. An Irishman, I do like going to the pub, but you could spend 5 hours with a friend, and I get home, my wife would ask, how's Jason, and I wouldn't know, because we've just talked about football or sport, or whereas my wife would spend 20 minutes having a coffee with a friend. She'd come back and have the life story and everything about it. To your point, Anthony, around women more equipped at connecting and communicating, about their feelings. And I find at W now, we've got the circle of trust where we finish our exercise and before we go dip in the water, and this space of men being able to communicate freely, it's been eye-opening. And this is conversations with people that you actually don't know for a lot of these men, and they've been willing to step forward into that space because we create that environment.
I find that the exact same thing. It's very confronting when you're with a group of men and somebody talks about their genuine feelings. It's like it feels like a whole silence drops around the room sometimes, because a bomb has just been dropped where we're supposed to, it feels like growing up, we're supposed to not have these feelings. We're supposed to kind of limit down our sharing ability and just get on with the job. Go and do. We take action, not stop and think about emotions. So like I've seen men in the table, they're like a deer in headlights when it's their turn to speak. If they want to speak, the first time it's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this. And then like the fifth time, it's like, okay, this is what happened. Okay. And it's just like, that's a habit. That's, just getting comfortable with the idea that you can speak about something that's real to you instead of just suppressing and hoping nobody notices.
Yeah. So I think from the three comments, one of the things there is that way we've been normalized as man, maybe as we were raised. There's a comment here from AS where it says, like, I'm guessing it's a male, AS, that he was raised with, open, emotionally expressive parents and felt that was perfectly normal. So obviously a lot of it is conditioning. I see with my son, who's in his late 20s, much more freedom to express emotionally than I felt when I was growing up, because society's different, right? So a lot of it is probably about, you know, how we've been raised. But I think certainly in our experience at the men's table, we see this over and over again where, as you've said, Jason, the men who come first have not had the experience or the opportunity and the practice to develop the emotional literacy and the comfort to be able to say, you know, how things really are. So I guess that's maybe where the difference might lie. But take your point, Joseph, and appreciated you bringing that in. Anyone else want to go on from there? We could go elsewhere with the chat now. Yeah,
I think, you know, as I'm listening, something that is always very apparent in the language and literature is that, you know, men's health is often painted as, you know, a picture of, you know, men with kids, men in relationships, men at work. But, you know, the majority of men that we really need to be targeting are men in these areas where they can't access to support is very, very difficult, whether it's through disability. You know, men in disability are very, very vulnerable. You know, men who may have substance issues where they can't leave their home. We don't actually make any investment in creating specific supports that are male friendly and that can reach people who have access issues. So, you know, for example, last year, and this again isn't a gendered thing, but it's the truth, your $10 billion went towards women's health in the federal funding and zero to men.
Yeah. So some real structural differences there too, Ray, in how we're perceiving who the priority groups are, etc.
Well, structural is in no funding specifically for men. I think that's more than structural. And because if we can't create male-friendly services for specific men who have higher needs, especially if we're looking at the social determinants, which, you know, here there's a lot of different ones. Wherever you go in the world, the social determinants are different. So therefore, if they're different everywhere, we need to be creating specific, you know, accessibility and support for those groups. But if there's no funding attached to it, like how do we do that?
Yeah.
10 billion as opposed to zero, that's a big gap.
Big gap. Yeah.
And that's not suggesting women should not get funding. Absolutely. I'm a woman. I love it. And I know what my needs are. However, I think we just need to be spreading that a little more evenly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why organizations like the Men's Table and W Now are actually appearing. Somebody's got to take up the slack, whether there's funding or not. It's a pressure cooker that needs to be relieved. So, you know, since I've joined the table, like my life has drastically changed. But I'm not too sure if it was attached to funding and it was like a system that I could kind of join and have a therapist, you know, or a panel. I'm not too sure if I'd actually open up. But when it's peer-to-peer, I feel like these guys are all in it with me, not just analysing what I say, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but isn't that
not saying there's anything
amazing?
wrong.
A male life-saving framework is created by men, like men's sheds. You know, there's more men's sheds here in Victoria than there are McDonald's outlets. That's a fact.
So making things accessible, like you say, Jason, a lot of blokes don't want to go to the doctor. I know I took my daughter about 2 years of regular encouragement to go and get a checkup. We ended up having to make a deal that she would go and get her spare tire changed because it was flat, and I would go to the doctor. That finally got me there. So yes, we're not very good at it.
You are good at it. You've just never been shown how to do it. We must change that language.
Right. Good.
I think to your point, Jason, what surprised me myself, you know, and W and I've only been in this space for a couple of years, is the lack of work being done in the coalface for men's mental health. And that's probably what surprised me myself when I stepped into this space initially, and which has been a big driving force for David and I in why W&O and the need for it. And back to your point, Ray, around, you know, the funding piece. None of it's funded. And it was a case of, well, Tyke, get off your ass and do something for men. And that was really why it started. The backbone of W&O was, to your point.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some interesting commentary here just about, the habits of learning to express emotions, overcoming things like shame, and that it's not always easy for people straight up to start being open. So we've sort of been talking about the value of that earlier. Why don't we just touch on that briefly, because it's sort of in the thread a little bit. Not every man is ready to just come to a group and spill his guts and feel completely comfortable with that. So, where do men make a start if they're more at the beginning or not even sure if they're ready?
Well, when I first went to a table, I wasn't actually ready to make a group of friends and share feelings. I actually thought it was just going to be guys at a pub. Okay, so it wasn't like I walked in going, look, I'm ready to start some feeling sharing and this is my starting point. My wife pushed me in and said, you have to go, not even knowing what it was at all. But look, it was going to be a group of people that I could get involved with. And as time has went on, I've become much more open just from having others lead the way. Some of us are leaders and some of us are followers, and we're not always leaders or followers all the time. We just tend to fall into patterns. But seeing everybody else talk about their feelings, it just became comfortable. I became comfortable enough to say, yes, I should actually be doing this. So it's like lead by example. But sometimes you just can fall into a group that you inadvertently fall into that actually helps you.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Jason. And my own experience with WNO, often it's been just turning up, and that connection piece. We had a guy yesterday come from Parramatta, which is an hour drive just to get there, and he just sat there and really didn't say much. And guys are trying to engage conversation. It's obviously a stepping stone to eventually, hopefully, being comfortable enough to step forward. But just turning up is a step in itself. I'm finding with the group that we have. And when you do see someone that's been coming for 6 months and eventually they step forward in the group and you see the weight almost coming off their shoulder, it's quite powerful and it's quite strong as a group of men, because you see that person there and he hasn't been sharing a whole lot. But then when it happens, wow, it's quite powerful.
Yeah.
I think the pressure on having to talk about feelings, my experience, as a pretty exclusive men's therapist, is holding space for men. It's not about the words. It's not about the talking. It's not about this pressure to talk about how you're feeling. It's, I was sitting with a guy the other day and got 5 minutes into silence, and he broke the silence. He said, God, that felt great. Just felt good just to sit here and just to sit here. And then stuff came out because there was this literal space being held with no pressure to inquire. It's, I think and that's true of anyone, really. I don't think, women love talking about their feelings any more than men do. There are just people that we know those people who do. I don't think that's a gendered thing.
Yeah.
I think
men aren't bad at it, though. They're not bad at it. They're bloody good at it.
They are once they get talking, right? But I think my experience with the table is, like you said, Jason, Ty, is seeing the guys that come along, and one guy at our table, probably not even sure why he was there. He was fairly positive. He wasn't coming into it sort of timid, but slowly through being immersed in the other people's stories, particularly one chap that was a little more apprehensive. I think just by being there and listening and witnessing sort of other guys about, wow, right, so you can bring that topic up in this group, and no one's judging. There's a lot of listening going on. You see these guys go through a transformation and be able to, after 6 tables, they're now they're talking and now they're very relaxed. And also seeing them being able to resolve the things that might be bugging them. I think we spoke last time, Jason, about blokes turning up and they're carrying something and it's can't quite put a label on it, but through the process the table, I think, outside of going to counselling or other forms of therapy, I think it seems to be a very powerful experience, just being part of a group, witnessing other men's stories and listening.
So the thread I'm hearing here is just when we hold space for others, we're actually getting benefit ourselves, but it obviously supports the others. And I suppose that's one thing we've touched on, but could be a stronger theme here is certainly men looking after themselves, getting themselves healthy, but in an environment where there's peers or community, it's also about what you're doing in service of others, isn't it? It's the two-way street, getting the benefit, but also giving the benefit. So maybe we'll finish off on this theme of communities, healthy relationships. What's the positive ripple effect that we can create when we look after ourselves and start looking out for others? Anyone want to sort of make some comments on that space?
I think not imposing your own views and your own beliefs and your own values on people per se, I think is something that we forget, because when we feel a value or we feel a belief, it will automatically come out of us, especially if we see somebody who's in danger. But we all have different ones. In fact, the other morning I was coming downstairs and my youngest boy, he's 14, he was having breakfast. And I said to Rory, I said, "Have you made your lunch?" And he said, "Yeah." And I saw his lunch on the bench. And I said, "Where's your banana?" Because he always has a banana in his lunch. That goes into my belief system. It's always there. Anyway, he said, "We don't have any." Right in front of him was a fruit bowl with 5 bananas in it. We never have a fruit bowl. They're always in the fridge. And he went, "Oh, wow." So I didn't go, "Oh, you idiot, they're in the bowl." I went, "How fascinating that your belief system is so strong that bananas belong in the fridge, that you actually could not see them in the bowl in front of you." And I thought it was such a really, really good example of we all don't see things the same way through the same lens. So that's not a time to judge somebody or impose on somebody what they should be thinking or feeling, more just about observing.
Great. Love it.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Being there for other people is the main component here. We're talking about sharing, but just being there when somebody else has an issue or a problem or just wants to talk, and without coming up with the solution, just letting them get it off their chest can actually really be more impactful than if you go and build half their house for them because they don't know how to bricklay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's certainly something that W&O, we certainly don't know all the answers. You like I keep saying about having men that are strong enough and to be able to open up, but also to support each other and just be there. Often it's just the years of other men there being there for you. It's there's no better feeling. I know myself when I see someone or you've done something for somebody, the feeling of perspective that you get on life, and as a man, certainly when you see the stories that are coming out, it's there's no better feeling for myself and certainly a lot of men in our group.
Yeah. Great. Well, look, I'm going to start to move us toward a close. So I've really enjoyed the conversation. Maybe ask from each of you, something that has jumped out for you in the conversation. Maybe it's just underlined something that you already felt or knew, but it's just been reinforced. Maybe it's a new way of hearing or seeing something, and or you just want to kind of send out a bit of a message to those who are watching and listening, about the theme we've been on of healthy habits for healthy men, healthy masculinities, and healthy relationships. So, yeah, just a little bit of a key thing that's jumped out, or a final comment from each of you.
I think what Ray was talking about, her son, with the blinkered vision, sometimes we're so focused on something that we don't actually see what's left and right of it. We're just fully focused. This is how it's always been. This is how it's going to be. And as soon as those blinkers are off, all of it, there's a whole flood of interaction that you have not even considered because you've been too focused. And I think I fall into this category. Once I'm in work mode, the rest of the world doesn't exist. So I just blinkered down, I've quite literally almost walked into traffic doing my job because I was so focused on what was in front of me. So.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, I think for me, similar, that point raised resonates with me, particularly the way I try to teach my boys. Rather than sort of holding beliefs and being dogmatic about opinions, trying to be a little bit open-minded. I mentioned truth at the beginning. It's a continuum. So I think being open to new ideas and listening is, it's something really important. Something I'm trying to teach my boys. Things don't always happen that way. That's a negative view. You can change perception, and look and listen to the world around you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. Look, I'm very appreciative to be able to come on here and share some of our stories as a group. But certainly, I think it continues to raise questions about people's perspective on what it means to be a man, and we'll continue to work on this space. It is subjective, as we've talked about in Ray. It certainly brings home that your upbringings and whatnot as a man is challenging. We've got lots of challenges, but from a habits perspective, it's really about just trying to make that habit as small as possible, so it becomes easy and it becomes the norm. And try to be that turn-up person, and try not to beat yourself up if it does break down that habit. And trying to keep perspective on things is something that it's a big piece of who I am and what I try to do in life, because it is difficult and we're all trying to get our way along in life, and we're all going to mess up and make mistakes at times, but trying to keep perspective is very important.
Great.
I would actually like to challenge everyone to develop a healthy habit, and that is our approach to the male narrative, that the automatic, I think it's a very lazy response is, men just don't talk. Nah, men are just hopeless at going to the doctors. No, really, if we can try really hard to reframe that if a man or a boy has not been shown, they literally don't know how to do it. And if they don't have permission, because I still see in society that men have permission to be vulnerable and show their feelings and all those things. But when it comes to things like dating and mating, guess what? We still want strong, capable men, so it's a little bit ambiguous about, I think, for men, is who they really need to be turning up for and how they need to be turning up. So if you keep that in mind, to just try to just repress that urge to go, men don't, to either say nothing or think, men can. If we create that space, and if we, preserve dignity, pride, and most of all, that beautiful masculinity, and respect that, you got a better chance of finding your way in.
Great. Building on from that, I think for me, I appreciated what you raised, Joseph, in your comment about, a lot of what we're talking about is actually just about being a good human. So, then there's the gendered thing. And I think just what you said there, Ray, sort of makes me think there's sort of space for both of those threads to be woven together, isn't there? Of course, many of the things we've talked about are about being a good human, being connected, being open, being open-minded, being willing to share, being willing to listen. But at the same time, there is unique dynamics that occur when men get together. There's unique opportunities. And there is some, you touched right at the end there on almost the biological differences that play out in our relationships with the opposite sex as well. So I think there's value in a men-only space to have conversations, but also to take that humanity that we develop, into every interaction and into every relationship that we have. So that's kind of struck me. And the other thing I liked is what you said, Ty, just be the show up person. I love that. It's simple. Everyone can do that. As to the best of their ability. So look, time to wrap up. Just want to say a big thank you to our panelists, firstly, to Anthony, to Jason, to Ray, and to Ty. Real pleasure to have you guys join us, coming in from very different perspectives. And also just to thank Prima EAP again for hosting and for the work you guys are doing in supporting workplaces and you know, being a supporter of Men's Health Week. And finally, just in terms of Men's Table, if people are interested, they've been listening, check out the website, themenstable.org, and come to an entree night where you find out about how it works, and then you can join a table from there. And thanks to the audience for being here and for your contributions and your chat. We'll be sending out a follow-up tomorrow. We discussed earlier, if there's open questions, things that you wanted to continue engaging with, then feel free to respond, and we can get some dialogue going offline and in the email space, and always open for, you know, supporting people in these sort of topics as well, which is what the Men's Table and WNOW are doing, and other men's organisations that we've also talked about today as well. So thanks again, everyone. And over to you, Madeline, to wrap us up.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, David. So thank you so much to everybody for coming along and joining. Thank you so much to every one of our panelists for coming along and speaking, and to everyone behind the scenes at Men's Table as well that helps make today happen. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for coming. I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, guys.
Ciao.
Bye.